All right, let's go to the last two games on this edition of Hitting the Books Part 2 Bowl Preview. It's the two games you're all excited for the most, the two college football playoff games. Semifinals on New Year's Day. We start in the Rose Bowl, Alabama, Michigan, the first college football playoff semifinal. Currently, Michigan 1.5 point favorites, 45 and a half the total in this game. You look at Michigan, obviously great season, and I think when you look at this game, particularly against Alabama, what's going to be the most interesting element to me is how Michigan's very good defense, matches up here against Alabama's improving offense. Now, people have obviously sung the praises of Michigan's defense all year, but they have definitely been bolstered by a Big Ten schedule this year and a Big Ten season of horrendous offensive teams. Like the best offensive teams they play, and they did play well against Penn State. That was one of the better teams. They shut them down. They did struggle a bit with Ohio State and Maryland, though, on the defensive side of the football. And there's no doubt that right now, Alabama was not a great offensive team early in the year, but they have really gotten it going down the stretch. It started with that Mississippi State game where they put up 40, but, 34 against Tennessee, 42 against LSU, 49 against Kentucky. They played well on offense against Georgia, a very good Georgia defense in the SEC championship game. I think when you look at it, Michigan's defense, people just absolutely loving the way they've played, but they have just not played many great offenses, many balanced offenses via the run and the pass, which Alabama is. And more importantly, they have not faced a quarterback that's capable of making a difference running with it, a mobile quarterback, a dual threat quarterback. Where are the dual threat quarterbacks that Michigan's defense has faced this year? Drew Aller's more of a pocket passer for Penn State. Kyle McCord's a pocket passer for Ohio State. They really haven't had to match up against a Jalen Milroe type athlete at the quarterback position this year, Michigan. So I think that's going to be a challenge for them here in this game. Their own offense with J.J. McCarthy and company. Now, do keep in mind, it's an offense that lost one of their best, if not their best, offensive lineman, Zach Zinter, for the season. That is obviously significant, no question about that. But, we've seen them still be able to move the football. And we've seen Alabama's defense this year, not vintage, I would say. They've had games where they had their struggles. Texas, of course, went into Tuscaloosa, and that's when Quinn Ewers threw the ball all over that defense. And, of course, we saw the last two games of the season. I mean, Auburn, had a lot of offensive success against them in the Iron Bowl. They played well against Georgia, but, Georgia not their best performance. And Georgia had a few turnovers that kept points off the board. They also missed a couple field goals. I remember that game. Georgia probably could have scored more points if they didn't miss their kicks. They didn't have those turnovers. So Alabama not so much they stopped Georgia. Georgia stopped themselves with a few mistakes. I think the total is actually a little light in this game. We think of Michigan as defense. We think of Michigan as an under team. But when you look at Michigan, when they played Ohio State, that game went over the total. The Maryland game went over the total. They've actually gone over the total, Michigan, believe it or not, in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of their last 9 games. They're 6-2-1 to the over in their last 9 games. Alabama was actually an over team this year, 9-3-1 to the over in their 13 games. So I actually think this total is just a little bit light. I see this more of a 28-21 game or a 30-24 game, or even 27-21. Something like that would cash this over with this total being in the low mid 40s. I think it's lower because of the overall narrative and perception of Michigan, that it's a dominant defense. Is it? You played a Penn State team. You played Ohio State, who did move the ball, even though they beat Ohio State. Ohio State had success moving the ball, 24 points against Michigan. And if Ohio State can score 24 against Michigan, I think Alabama can get 24 against Michigan. And if Alabama gets to 24 against Michigan, there's a damn good chance this game goes over the total. So I think the total's a little light. I lean Alabama too, but I like the total more. So it's a lean for me with Alabama, but I like this over. Very low, in my opinion. A little too low. I think based on the perception, it's a dominant Michigan defense. I disagree a little bit. I think it's factored into one of the worst offensive seasons I've ever seen out of the Big Ten collectively, top to bottom.
Yeah.
Brutal offenses across the board. I think this will be a bigger challenge for the Wolverines on that side of the ball. What do you think here, Conor? First semifinal.
Yeah, even the last year, right, in the semifinal, TCU, that game was just a wild game, right, in the 50s or
Couldn't stop
whatever.
him.
Jeez.
And couldn't
Yeah, it was
stop
just,
him. Yep.
yeah. Uh, yeah, they
And
just
remember, a
really haven't
mobile
played anybody.
quarterback too, Max Duggan. Mobile quarterback, guy that could run, guy that could make plays with his feet, and they were a mess on
Hmm.
defense trying to contain him. And Jalen Milroe's got some of those attributes.
I've just liked what I've seen from Milrow as the year has gone on, and he's still kind of revert to some of the stuff he does to early on in the year. But I like what he's doing. Bama's defense too. I think one thing Michigan will have some success is, and what they want to do is run the football. Like Alabama wasn't bad against the run. Like, yeah, I gave up 125 a game. So I think Michigan could have some success. And in the end, if Michigan is in this game, McCarthy's got to make some plays because I think they're just going to want to try to run it and just win this game in the trenches and try to keep it low scoring. But I don't know if that's going to work at all. But I think that's what they want to do here. Maybe take a few shots with McCarthy. But I think Bama wins here. I just, in the end, give me Bama.
All right. Like I say, I definitely, if this number stays where it is, I'll probably end up on the Crimson Tide here at some point. And again, to me too, this is a prove it for Michigan. Michigan has had no problem at times getting to the playoff. It's about playing well in the playoffs, in the semifinals. That's where the struggle has been for Jim Harbaugh and his team. So can they finally put that to bed here this year and win a
And
play? Because last
Bama,
year was
the
ugly.
4-1 here,
Yep.
Bama, they just seem pumped.
Yep.
Like Michigan is in undefeated.
Yep.
I don't know. Michigan's a little like, oh boy, they got Bama here. Got to win this, to get to the title game. So I think
And
they're a
to my
little
point about
shook.
Michigan's defense, I'm not saying Michigan's defense is bad. Okay, it's an excellent defense.
No,
Don't
they're
get me
good.
wrong.
They're
They're
very
good.
good.
But I'm talking about there's levels, as my guy Dutch would say. There's levels to this. And when you look at when they've had to play in the college football playoff the last 2 years, this Michigan defense, we saw them give up 51 and get absolutely annihilated, that defense, by TCU last year in the semifinals. And then 2 years ago, also in the semifinals against Georgia, they gave up 34 points and they lost 34-11. So they've had problems defensively in the playoff against the Georgias and the TCUs. And again, Georgia that year, I think, had Bennett at quarterback. That guy can move around a bit. They had Duggan last year, TCU, another mobile quarterback, and they're going to see one here, and a lot of speed as
Speed and
well. They
playmakers,
struggled.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Michigan struggled. Couldn't contain Georgia. Couldn't contain TCU. For as good as the defense was going into those games, into the Georgia game 2 years ago in the semis, into the TCU game in the semis last year, it was a different defense. It was a defense that just couldn't keep it going in the semifinal against these teams with playmakers and speed and mobility at the quarterback spot. And that's what friggin' worries me again here against Bama. Simple as that.
Yeah. But I think this isn't a very. I like how Alabama's been playing
Yeah.
a little bit lately, but this isn't a vintage. You talked about the defense, the offense. To me, this is if Michigan ever's going to get them, it's here
Yeah.
if they can.
Yeah, I agree. I think from the totality of the season, there's been better Alabama offenses and quarterbacks, clearly, because we were talking about whether Jalen Milroe was the guy early in the year. That's how
Oh
bad
yeah.
things were. But they they played absolutely better. You can tell he's one of the most improved players, honestly, in college football from early in the year to now is Jalen Milroe. He has improved just so significantly, and that's what's bothering me about Michigan here. Now they got to take on an Alabama offense that's full of confidence the way they played
Correct.
late in the season.
Real quick on Ragu's the ticket and the money. With that I would wait because we're so far out.
Yeah.
Like if this was just like in a few days, I would just we're so far out. Once you see the money a little bit towards that week, I think you'll see it a lot clearer. A little bit. Because we see this every year and we got to wait a month. It's just people jumping in early, putting their money compared to what's late. So I think, towards more game time, a few days we'll see it. That really what's up.
All right, good stuff. And that'll be, of course, Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit for ESPN calling that game. The